My mom kicked me out because I couldn't get along with her new boyfriend. So, I moved out, thinking she'd realize he was using her. But months later, she called, crying about losing everything. And as she begged for my help, I asked her one question: is he still there? So recently my mom kicked me out for not liking her leech boyfriend. He pushed her into debt, and I refused to help. Has anyone else here ever had some sketchy person come along and get their hooks into somebody they love, and suddenly it's like they become a completely different person? I've heard of this happening before, but I never expected it to come between me, 23, female, and my mom, 48, female. We were always super close, especially after my dad passed away when I was 16. That was a tough time for both of us, and we got through it by relying on each other. I also have a sister, Diana, 21, female. The three of us had a good family dynamic, but my sister mostly kept to herself, so my mom and I were pretty much best friends. About a year ago, my mom started dating again, and we had no problem with it. My dad had been gone for a while now, and we all understood that whoever my mom dated wouldn't be replacing him. She'd been lonely, so we felt like she deserved to find some happiness. She went on a few dates that didn't turn into anything serious until 3 months ago. That's when she met her new boyfriend, Jeff. I tried to like him, but I couldn't stand the guy right off the bat, and I didn't get what my mom saw in him. The guy was a bum. He always claimed that he was between jobs and that he was working on big opportunities. I gave him the benefit of the doubt at first, but it was obvious that he had no real plans. He spent most of his time at our house, lounging on the couch, watching TV, and drinking. At first, I tried to be happy for my mom. She seemed happier than she had in years, so I thought it wouldn't hurt to be civil and get along. I figured I could put up with him for her sake, but it was hard. See, the guy was a leech. He would come over and spend days at a time at our house, living off our food, drinking lots of beer that he always sent my mom to buy for him, and just being a general couch potato. You couldn't pass through the living room without seeing this man rotting his brain on TV or TikTok. I tried to open my mom's eyes to this, but she would just brush me off and make excuses for him. She'd say he just needed time to get back on his feet and that he needed a chance. I did give him a chance, multiple chances, but it was clear that this guy had no intention of actually doing anything with his life. He wasn't even trying to find a job. I tried to drop hints that he should get a job by asking him how his job search was going. He would shamelessly tell me that he wasn't looking for a job, and then he'd launch into one of his big plan speeches about how he was working on investments that were going to change his life overnight. He'd spend a lot of his time talking about how the system screwed over guys like him, smart guys with big plans, as he always put it, once he had a few drinks. He could rant for hours about how the school system had failed him because he was an independent thinker, how he had game-changing ideas. During one of these rants, I got tired of listening to his nonsense and asked why he couldn't get a job if he was so smart. He just glared at me and went on a tangent about how corporations were looking for mindless drones, not innovators. My mom got mad at me, though, and shouted at me for being rude to her boyfriend. That was the first incident where I started to notice that he had my mom wrapped around his thinker. The last time she had yelled at me like that was when I was a kid, and it was always over serious things. I never imagined she'd snap at me like that over a guy she'd only known for a few months. It really stung, and it only made me dislike Jeff more. After that incident, I couldn't say anything even mildly critical about Jeff without my mom getting defensive, but I didn't feel like I could let it go anymore because I started realizing that Jeff wasn't just lazy, he was actively taking advantage of her. He was freeloading off her and contributing nothing, and I had enough. Things got even worse when he moved in. Now, he was mooching off my mom 24/7. What really irked me was that he was mooching off me too. You see, before Jeff, my mom and I lived together alone. Diana went to college nearby, and she came over to stay for weekends and holidays sometimes, but it was mostly me and mom, so we split the bills. We'd get together and cover utilities, rent, and general groceries. It made things easier for her, and it made me feel good to know that I was helping out while I lived with her. So, can you blame me for feeling bothered when Jeff moved in and started wolfing down our food and using our electricity and hot water without contributing a cent? I kind of hoped that his moving in would show mom how bad he was. I hoped she'd talk him into getting his act together and looking for work, but I was hoping for too much. I come home from work and find him in the exact same spot where I'd left him in the morning, except he'd be surrounded by empty bottles and junk food wrappers that he'd expect my mom to clean up when she got home. I hated seeing her get taken advantage of like this, and I decided I needed to talk to her. I sat my mom down and tried to have a heart-to-heart with her. I tried to talk to her about how Jeff never paid for anything and he was way too comfortable letting her foot the bill for everything. She was feeding him and cleaning his messes when she came home from work while he sat around being useless. I told her it wasn't fair to both of us that we were working full-time to contribute to a household where Jeff did absolutely nothing. I could see that my mom was getting annoyed at me, and she snapped that Diana also didn't pay for anything. I countered that it was hardly the same thing. Diana was family, a student who only stayed here 2 or 3 days at a time. Besides, she pulled her weight when she was home. If she really needed something, she paid for it herself, and she kept up with chores when she was around. That was much more than we could say for Jeff. Of course, nothing I said made a difference. She just told me that the details of their relationship weren't my concern. I didn't give up, though. I really hated seeing my mom in this sort of situation, and I tried to talk to her on 2 or 3 other occasions. I really thought I could eventually make her see reason if I made my case calmly and logically. Boy, was I wrong. On my most recent attempt, my mom blew up at me. She accused me of not wanting her to be happy. She said I was jealous of Jeff because I wasn't ready to share her with anyone, and that's why I was trying to undermine the relationship. Then she said Jeff had told her that I was hostile to him. That threw me off. Yeah, it's not like I was going out of my way to be friendly to him, but I wasn't being outright mean either. But according to him, I was rude and had made it clear that he wasn't welcome in our home. I tried to explain that I'd never treated him as badly as he claimed, but she just kept insisting that I was jealous. I couldn't believe what was happening. My mom always heard me out. We used to be best friends before Jeff came along, and now it was like he turned her against me. That was when my mom dropped the bombshell. If I couldn't coexist with Jeff, then I needed to leave. That came out of the blue, and I was speechless. I had just finished college and started out a new job a little while ago. The pay was just okay, and my mom and I agreed that it would be best for me to live with her for a little while to build up some savings. We had an unofficial timeline that I would start apartment hunting in the month of my 24th birthday. That would be in March. But here she was, trying to kick me out in November. I wasn't sure if this was my mom's or Jeff's idea, but it broke my heart to hear that from her. She said I was overdue to get a place of my own, and I reminded her that we both agreed that I'd move out in March. She just said that I'd been living there too long and that I needed to find my own place if I was going to keep trying to sabotage her relationship with him. I was stunned. I couldn't believe that she was willing to throw me out over this guy that she'd only been dating a few months. I tried one last time to remind her of the plan we'd agreed on and how I was still saving to get a place. I let her know that I'd have a hard time landing on my feet if she kicked me out. None of that seemed to matter to her. She just said that I was an adult and I'd be fine. She had to look out for her own happiness, and I needed to leave. Then she said Jeff needed a room to use as an office, and that my room would be perfect. That was when I was certain that kicking me out was Jeff's idea. I could see that there was no reasoning with her, and it stung me more than I can describe. I love my mom, but it was like Jeff had come between us and rewritten our dynamic. I wasn't her daughter and her best friend anymore. Now she saw me as an obstacle to her happiness. I wasn't going to beg her, though. I'm not the type to stay where I'm not wanted. I also didn't want Jeff to have the satisfaction of knowing that he got to me when my mom reported back to him. So, I just asked her one last time if this was really what she wanted, and she said it was. I didn't have any chance after that. I packed my things and moved out within a week. My sister protested and tried to get my mom to change her mind, but she was set. I hadn't saved as much as I would have liked to since I'd been helping with the bills at home. I was lucky to get a small, affordable apartment, though not exactly what I'd been planning for. It was better than living where I wasn't wanted, with my mom and her new boyfriend. I won't lie, for a while, I was hoping that my mom would come to her senses when I was gone and that she'd see Jeff for what he was. For about a week after I moved out, I waited for a call from her apologizing or asking me to come home, but there's been nothing. We haven't spoken since I moved into my new place, but it seems like she doesn't need me anymore. Maybe she really is happier with Jeff, and I was just getting in the way. I need to know what you guys think because I'm still very confused. It's really tough when someone you love gets involved with someone who doesn't have their best interests at heart. You put a lot of effort into trying to protect your mom and bring attention to the issues you saw, so it's completely understandable that you're feeling hurt and confused right now. It's frustrating that she seems to be prioritizing Jeff over your concerns, especially when you've been through so much together. Moving out was a brave decision, and it's good that you're taking steps to create a space for yourself. Hopefully, with some time and distance, your mom will see things more clearly. Update 1. After I moved out, I did my best to move on with my own life. After all, my mom had made it clear that she didn't want me to be a part of hers. She hadn't bothered to check in on the daughter that she had kicked out, and the one time I gave in and tried to call her, she didn't answer it and didn't even return the call. You can't imagine how painful that is if you haven't lived it before. Diana wasn't happy about what had happened between me and Mom, and she started spending more time at my place than at my mom's. You can't imagine how painful that is if you have to imagine how painful that is if you haven't lived it before. Diana wasn't happy about what had happened between me and Mom, and she started spending more time at my place than at my mom's. She also kept me updated on their situation. They had turned my room into an office for Jeff. He talked my mom into selling the things I'd left behind, and she gave him the money as seed money for some investment or business plan of his. That was a gut punch. Jeff had clearly manipulated my mom into kicking me out and erasing any trace of me from the house. Hearing that she'd sold my things was infuriating. I hadn't left anything particularly important behind, but I didn't think my mom would get rid of my stuff so easily. And then, giving him the money so he could invest it, what was she thinking? Eventually, I told Diana that I didn't want to hear more about Mom. It only brought up painful memories, and I was working on moving on. She had no problem forgetting about me, so I would do the same. I spent the next few months working and saving up what I could. I even managed to land a better job. It still wasn't a great job, but the pay was better, and I was able to make ends meet for the first time since I'd left home. It felt like things were finally starting to look up for me. Then, one day, Diana told me she had to talk to me. She apologized and said it was about Mom. I was reluctant at first, but I decided to hear her out. She told me that Mom had asked her for some cash recently. Diana said that this was the first time she'd ever made a request like that, so she asked if everything was okay. Things were, in fact, not okay. Mom was having a harder time covering rent and bills without me there. She was providing financially for 2 people on one paycheck, and apparently, Jeff was regularly getting payments from her to use as investments in his get-rich-quick schemes. That was news to me, but it shouldn't have been. It sounded exactly like the type of thing he would do. After all, he had convinced Mom to give him the money they got from selling my stuff. Diana was worried, and she asked me to talk to Mom. I knew it would be useless, but she begged me. I reluctantly agreed but made sure she knew I was just doing it for her. No surprise, she didn't answer me. Diana wasn't ready to give up that easily, though. She called Mom on her phone and handed it off to me once my mom answered. She got quiet when she heard my voice. I told her that Diana had asked me to talk to her, and I asked if what she had told me was true. I wasn't surprised when my mom flew off the handle and started screaming about how Diana shouldn't have told me anything. She said I was jealous and lonely, and I hated to see her happy. She said I was just sad because I had never been in a good relationship. She didn't let me get a word in, and I ended the call when I felt the insult starting to get to me. Diana had heard everything. She looked like she was about to start crying while she apologized to me. I just said it was fine, but I told her I wouldn't be calling Mom again. She kicked me out and said I would be able to handle myself because I'm an adult. Well, she's a much older adult than I am, so she shouldn't need my help. I could tell Diana wasn't satisfied with that, but she didn't push. Diana stayed true to her word. She still came around on weekends, which I deeply appreciated. It made me feel like I hadn't been fully abandoned. But she never uttered a word about Mom, and I never asked. It turned out that the next time the topic of my mother would come up, it was from the woman herself. She called me one evening when I was just unwinding from a rough day at work. Seeing that the call was from her soured my mood, so I rejected her call. She tried calling a few more times after that, but I declined them all. If she was going to go no contact with me, then I'd do the same to her. She caught me by surprise one morning when I was preoccupied. The number was hidden, and I answered the call without really thinking about it. I wanted to hang up the moment I heard my mom's voice, but to my shock, she was crying. She told me that Jeff's investments had failed. The crypto he invested in was rug pulled, which I later understood meant it had more or less turned out to be a scam. Long story short, they'd lost everything they'd invested. It got worse. She had borrowed a lot of money trying to get the capital for Jeff's scheme. He promised her that their investment was going to multiply by at least 10 times, so she'd scramble to get as much money together as she could. Now it was all gone, and she was left with a lot of debt on her hands. I found it hard to feel bad for her. I reminded her that I'd warned her about Jeff, and now he had gone and ruined her finances. I asked her if she had dumped him yet, and she got quiet. It's not his fault. He didn't know the investment was going to turn out like that, she said. I told her that no investment was a guarantee, but Jeff had always acted like he was certain he was about to make $1 million. I asked again if she was still dating him, and she confirmed that she was. I told her that I wouldn't help her with a dime until she cut him out of her life. Her tone changed after that. She became defensive again. She started blaming me, saying that it was my jealousy that got her into this situation in the first place. According to her, things wouldn't have gone so badly if I'd stayed and kept helping with the house's finances. I just laughed and told her that she couldn't honestly believe that kicking me out had been my decision. Handing her money to Jeff was her decision. She needed to learn to take accountability for her own mistakes. She started crying again and tried to guilt-trip me, saying that she was my mother and that family is supposed to help each other. I told her that family doesn't betray each other for some deadbeat leech, and that I wasn't going to bail her out of a mess she'd made by trusting him over me. She'd kicked me out and refused to speak to me for months, but now that she needed help, I was supposed to bail her out, not just her, but Jeff too? I'd rather lose everything I had than help that man. Check around in my room. Oh sorry, Jeff's office. Maybe there's something of mine that you haven't sold yet, I said before ending the call. I didn't answer when she called back. She hadn't learned her lesson yet. She was still with Jeff, and she didn't apologize to me for how she treated me. She even went ahead and blamed me again. She didn't deserve my help, and I didn't feel bad for withholding it. Diana wasn't happy with my response, but she never said anything. I think she understands my reasons and accepts them, even if she disagrees. She told me that Jeff is still around and that he's still a deadbeat relying on my mom for everything. Diana tries not to bring Mom up too often, but I get the feeling that things aren't getting any better for her, and she's still hanging on to Jeff's empty promises. My mom has tried to get in contact with me a few times since then, but I'm committed to cutting off contact fully. You don't get to abandon family and try to pick them back up when it suits you. I won't give her a dime, especially while she's still with that loser. I found my own peace in this situation, and I'm walking away to focus on building my own life. I won't let her choices drag me down.